2, 1.
New York, NY. LaunchPod starts now.
Welcome to the New York Launch Pod, the New York Press Club award-winning podcast on the most interesting new startups, businesses, and openings in the New York City area. I'm your host and New York attorney, Hal Cooper-Smith. And in this episode, we are speaking about autism. It's a growing problem for families, and no one is quite sure why autism rates are increasing. Our guest, Katya Sverdlov, saw the growing problem and could not stay on the sidelines. Katya is the co-founder of JelikaLite, a device designed for people with autism that has shown promising results. Here's Katya.
We want to demystify autism. We not only want to provide an effective home-based treatment for families, we want to make it personalized because every child on the spectrum is unique.
Listen to the episode to find out how JelikaLite works, the obstacles Katya and her team are overcoming to bring a new medical device to market, and a whole lot more. But before we go to the episode, we have a sponsor, ResQ, New York State's premier residential rental compliance platform for landlords. Rental laws in New York City are difficult to manage, and ResQ helps you follow the law. If you are a landlord who wants to keep up with inflation, you need ResQ. For example, you may not be able to increase your rent by the amount you thought you could. ResQ helps solve that problem and a whole lot more. Go to resqme.com and enter in some simple information, and ResQ will take care of the rest. That's resqme.com, RezQueme.com. And with that, let's go to the interview. So what is JelikaLite?
JelikaLite is a company where we are developing an intelligent medical device for children on the autism spectrum. Autism rates keep rising across the world. There is no cure. The cause remains unknown, and parents are desperate. We believe that children on the spectrum can lead a fulfilling and productive life. And that is why we're developing Cogwillow, an innovative solution to reduce children's autism symptoms. It is an intelligent medical device that combines non-invasive brain stimulation with near-infrared light, EEG sensors, and an intelligent personalization platform. The results are improvement of autism symptoms, improvement of speech, improvement of responsiveness, and we can't wait to bring this to market.
So you've said a lot there. Autism rates are rising. We certainly see that and can certainly feel that. How did you see that in your own life and decide to start this business?
So my co-founder, Dr. Eugenia Steingold, is a clinical psychologist, and she has been working with children on the spectrum for many years. And she saw the utter desperation that families have right now because there are no practical solutions. Right now, the standard of care is ABA, which is behavioral therapy, and medications. Behavioral therapy requires the presence of a highly trained specialist who comes to your house. It requires 20 to 30 hours a week for many years. And it's highly controversial now because many children who later grow up believe that ABA actually hurt them as opposed to help them. Many children simply do not even respond to ABA therapy. And medications treat some of the symptoms such as irritability and maybe anxiety, but it doesn't work on the underlying cause of autism. I, in my own life, work with families of special need children, and in many cases, these children are adults, their parents are aging, and they come to me because at this point, there's no hope for their children, and they realize that as the parents are aging, the children are adult, and there's no one to be able to take care of these children, and there are no solutions. So both of us saw the desperation in the families, and Eugenia read a very promising study done by Haifa University using the technology of transcranial photobiomodulation on children with autism. She was very excited. She started looking for a product that she could recommend to her patients, and there's nothing available. There's absolutely nothing available in the market right now, even though there were some promising academic studies. She told me about it, and I usually like to get things done. So I said, well, if there's nothing available and I understand the need for this solution, let's do it ourselves. And that's how we started JelikaLite.
So you said a medical term. I think if I'm not mispronouncing, it's transcranial modulation.
Transcranial photobiomodulation.
And so how do you know that your device is actually working?
Excellent question. And it's a question that applies to many medical devices as well as wellness devices that people are pushing. Autism parents are tired and sick of being promised many, many voodoo cures that promise the moon, but in the end, it's unclear whether it actually does anything. So we went the medical route, which means that before our product is available widely to the market, one, we're going through the FDA approval process, and two, we're running clinical studies to make sure that, running our device compared to placebo, compared to a sham device, to see whether the improvement that children are getting when they're using our device is better than children who are getting exactly the same type of treatment, but not ours. And so this is what we've done to date. We've run one clinical study, which was small, but it was double-blind, placebo-controlled trial with 30 children, of which 16 received treatment and 14 did not. All children had the same experience. They would come into the office, they would put on the device on their head, but for some of them, the device was turned on, and for others, it was not. The parents did not know whether the children were in the active group or in the placebo group. And then we compared the results. The children were rated based on child with autism rating scale before the treatment started. And then at the end of the 8-week period when they were receiving the treatment. And the results for the children who received the treatment were spectacular on several different categories. One was autism symptoms. Two, just as exciting as the actual symptoms, were EEG data. We measured electroencephalogram symptoms of the brain, and the children who have autism have high delta waves, which is usually a sign of brain inflammation, usually a sign of neurological disorders when present in wakeful states. The children who received the treatment and improved had the delta waves decreased much more than the children in the placebo group. So that was incredibly exciting. And third, therapists of the children who received the treatment, therapists who didn't even know that the children were receiving treatment, started calling the parents of these kids, telling them, we don't understand what's going on with your son or your daughter, but whatever you're doing, keep doing it because there's such huge improvement. And I can talk about specific kids and what happened to them, but this was incredibly exciting. And so to it, that was a very long answer to your question, how do we know this is working? This is what we've done to date. And of course, to get the FDA approval, de novo, we have to do a much larger trial. And that's what we're working on right now. We are going through the FDA process, and we will be running a trial with over 100 participants in the future.
So you talked objectively about the study with 30 participants, but in addition to that definitive feedback, I also understand that you won a National Science Foundation Award recently.
So yes, we received it's not an award, it's a grant. It's a National Science Foundation Phase 1 SBIR grant. And it's a very prestigious grant given to approximately 10% of the applicant of small businesses, and it's for the future. So it's not for something that we've done in the past, although, of course, they don't give grants to companies that are just starting out. They want to see some form of already traction. So they looked at what we've done in the past, and they gave us a grant for future work, which is what we're starting now, because we want to study much more the correlation between the autism symptoms, the EEG data, and autism symptoms reduction as done by our device.
And you talked about your connection to autism, even though you don't have a child who has autism or has experienced autism, but you've worked with families where there is autism. A lot of people see a problem and want to solve it, but entrepreneurs and founders are different. What made you take the steps from seeing this problem, connecting with a doctor, to being a founder in this space?
I don't have a child with autism. However, I do have friends I have several friends who have children with autism, and their symptoms range from severe autism, meaning nonverbal children who continue to wear diapers at the age of 15, to high functioning autism, where children and later adults are able to function in today's society, be fully independent. I saw a need, and I could not believe, to be honest, that this need has not been solved to date. And so we wanted to help, really, because it's a mission to help, this is Tikkun Olam, trying to heal the world. So this was a need. To be honest, we had no idea what we were doing when we were starting. We did not realize what a journey this is. We did not realize what a painful process it is to go through the FDA approval. We did not realize how painful it is to raise funds. Every single step has been a challenge. But because there is such a need for what we're doing, and because we saw the results in the families that were coming through our clinical trial, we keep doing this. I mean, there's so many companies out there that are attempting to fix small little things, and these small little things may be important. And in the end, I want to spend my time on something that I can feel proud of and see the greatest good. So that's what powers us through at this point.
One of the things that's interesting about you in particular as a co-founder of this company is that you're a non-technical founder in a very technical and certainly the medical space. What has that experience been as someone who doesn't have a medical degree working in this space?
Humbling. Absolutely humbling. One of the first things that we did was we went through accelerators, a Westchester County Biotech Accelerator, which was the absolutely greatest thing that we've done. I'm incredibly grateful to them. They've taught us so much, and I'm really grateful for them taking a chance on us. And I think I was the only non-technical founder there at that point. And I think it made me realize that, people need somebody like me, because doctors and scientists can talk about the medical stuff and the science stuff forever. And they can look at it like this, and they can look at it like that. And it's absolutely fascinating. And in the end, nothing gets done. And so I'm the one who listens humbly. And I'm like, okay, and so what's the decision? And I'm the one who's pushing them to finally stop solving and decide and make. And so I think you need both. I am not. So again, my co-founder is the technical one, and she's I say of the two of us, she's the smart one, and I'm the organized one. And we're a great team because we both need each other. I would not have been the one able to read the science and come up with this idea and continue pushing the science through. On the other hand, she would never have been the one who would persevere and continue following up with everyone who needs to be followed up on, and would organize and would just get lost in all the paperwork and would just keep talking about an idea. So I think as a combination, we're quite perfect.
And the business model, at least in a medical field, has to be a little bit different than a consumer good or a direct to consumer. How has navigating the medical marketplace in terms of a business model and user distribution been in terms of your business?
So we're not there yet. We're not distributing the device yet because we right now have FDA breakthrough device designation, which means that FDA has looked at what we've done and said, you have something that looks to be amazing, that fulfills a need in the market, which is true. But it does not mean that it's approved for sale. To get a full approval, we'll need to run a much larger trial with over 100 people. Going forward, once we have that approval, we do plan to sell. This is going to be a medical device. It will be prescribed for by the doctor, ultimately purchased by the parent of a child with autism. Eventually, of course, we want to have insurance reimbursement so that the device will be paid for by Medicaid, because half of the families with children on autism are on Medicaid. That is a long journey. To get insurance reimbursement for a novel product may take a few years. So there are various options that we're looking at. One, we figured out how doctors will be reimbursed for this device, for prescribing this device and monitoring the usage of this device, which is already a big part of the problem because doctors don't want additional. Even though doctors really want to help their patients, they also don't want to be burdened. And so we figured out how they can be compensated properly for their time. As far as parents are concerned, unfortunately, initially, the device will have to be paid for privately. And there is a very large population of percentage of parents who are willing to pay as long as there are studies that show that the device actually does something useful. While we're also looking at potentially other solutions. For example, New York State has a self-pay option where the state pays for medical devices for families who cannot afford. Other states have different solutions, and we will be going through the insurance reimbursement process.
And you mentioned from the outset that autism is a growing problem. Why do you think that you're the first company to tackle the problem using transcranial photomodulation?
Because it's hard to bring a novel technology to market. It's hard. It's expensive. People are, autism right now, 2% of children are now diagnosed with autism, which is a huge market. However, a third of the population is expected to develop dementia later. So when medical device companies and pharmaceuticals are choosing which market to focus on, they're focusing on the larger one. And 33% versus 2% is a big difference. So a lot of companies have been studying this technology for neurological disorders, but focusing on diseases of the aging, such as Alzheimer's. There are companies that are now looking at this technology for autism as well. Amazing. It still amazes me, but we seem to be ahead of everyone, given the FDA recognition, given the NSF funding, given the double-blind clinical study. I mean, I have to tell you, it's still mind-boggling to me about how slow people are moving. We've started this 3 years ago. We're still both working part-time in that I have a law practice and my co-founder has a psychology practice. We've raised just a bit over $1 million in funding compared to other companies who've raised over $10 million of funding, over $20 million of funding. And yet, given these limitations, we still seem to be ahead of everyone in where we are. So I don't know. I think maybe because we have a great team. I mean, aside from myself and my co-founder, we now have a CTO, and he has over 30 years of experience in specifically this technology and bringing medical devices to market. We have a COO, and she has over 20 years of experience in developing software products and project management. So she has been a huge help. We have a wonderful scientific advisory team, and we have AI specialists. And so I'm incredibly grateful to the entire team who has been working without pay, but really just based on pure enthusiasm of what we're doing and of using this technology. And again, I think the combination of both scientific and business background is a wonderful combination.
And I think we know the answer, based off of what you said, but I certainly want to hear it from you. What does success and the ultimate goal for JelikaLite look like?
We want to demystify autism. We not only want to provide an effective home-based treatment for families, we want to make it personalized because every child on the spectrum is unique. Some are verbal, some are not, some are hyper, some are withdrawn, some have mitochondrial disturbances, some don't have any genetic abnormalities. Some children receive therapy and some don't. Some have medication, some don't. Every child needs to have his or her own treatment. By doing brain stimulation and simultaneously looking at the child's brain from the inside, by doing EEG, we are looking at effect, we are correlating with symptoms, and we want to develop a program and an algorithm that really enables each parent to choose the treatment that's right for their child. We want to have these children integrated into life and to have a fulfilling life in today's world.
Well, that is a wonderful note to end things on. Katya Sverdlov, thank you for stepping onto the New York Launch Pod and sharing your time with us. How do people find out more about you and JelikaLite?
Please feel free to go on the website, JelikaLite.com. Thank you so much for having me here. Really appreciate it.
And if you want to learn more about the New York Launch Pod, you can follow us on social media at NY Launch Pod and visit nylaunchpod.com for transcripts of every episode. And if you're a super fan, Katya, are you a super fan of the New York Launch Pod?
I am now.
If you're a super fan like Katya, please leave a review on Apple Podcasts. It is greatly appreciated and does help people discover the show.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the New York Launch Pod. For more information, please visit nylaunchpod.com.